Then we're moving to catching the money launderers. Who they catchers?
So our project is called Catch Money Launderers, and I will now tell you what this is about. So we will tell you about the problem we're trying to solve, some data issues, and finally our three approaches to solve them. Okay, I will start with outlining the problem we're trying to solve. Just imagine there's a bank observing credit card transactions, and they want to know if there is any fraud in these transactions, because fraud is bad, you know, and customers maybe lose confidence in the bank, and in the end it's a loss for the bank because the bank needs to compensate the customers. So it's basically a classification problem. We just want to detect if there are any malicious transactions. But in addition, you have to take into account that the potential financial loss the bank can face is twofold. What you can see on the left side, if the bank can't detect the fraudulent transaction, it just faces a loss. But on the other side, if the bank tries to monitor and to do some investigation about the fraudulent transactions, it's also not for free. It generates costs. So there are two sources of costs, and we need to find a trade-off and minimize the total cost for the bank. And it was a task in our analysis. And now I come to some data issues. As you can see, our dataset is anonymized, so the only feature which is not anonymized is the amount of the transaction. So this was also a challenge for us, because feature engineering is quite hard and little intuition can be applied. And furthermore, the dataset is of course highly unbalanced. Only a really small amount of data points are actually frauds, and this was also a big challenge for us. And Irina will now proceed to explain our methods and our results.
So, how do you approach the problem given the challenges that we outlined? Well, first we found that you can create new features even on a highly challenging data set. For example, we noticed that a higher percentage of fraudulent transactions were a whole amount as opposed to a fractional amount. And so we took the fraction of our amount feature and made it into a new feature of our data set. So pretty much made use of the only non-anonymized column in our data set. We then needed a baseline to measure our results against. And usually a bank would set a threshold above which to investigate all transactions. But this of course comes at a cost. And with our data set, when we set the cost of investigation to an arbitrary 10 euros per advice from our mentor, we couldn't just find this threshold because the fraudulent transactions are so rare and so small that this approach just didn't pay off at all. So really, this is our baseline, and we tried to explore if machine learning can do better. And our first try was an unsupervised learning approach. We reduced the dimensionality of our data set using t-SNE, and then we tried 12 different models to find outliers, chose the best one, and this allowed us to reduce our losses by 56%. And while a great result, we wanted to see if a supervised approach could do better. And so we oversampled our data using smooth algorithm to account for the fact that it was so extremely unbalanced. And then we fit a few high-performing classifiers to it, and this allowed us to reduce our total fraud losses by 72%. So clearly a better result than an unsupervised approach. But we wanted to take things further, and so we paired this approach with first splitting our transactions into clusters, and then oversampling within each cluster and fitting a custom model and a custom admin threshold per cluster. And while both approaches yielded very similar results, we saw that one model would be best if the cost to investigate was high, and another model would be best if that cost was low. So it really depended what the cost of investigation would be in a particular bank in real life. So in conclusion, what we try to show today is that you can get creative and create new features even with a very challenging data set, that you can use the knowledge of how the banks operate in the real world to define a cost function to minimize as opposed to just measuring accuracy. And finally, you may try to segment your data and apply a custom model and a threshold per segment. So this was the work of 4 people. Feel free to come up afterwards and ask questions, and we will now give the stage to the next team, and we're really excited to see what the rest of you have worked on. Thank you.
Alina, thank you so much, and Alexander. Thank you guys.